On our Instagram story the other day, I was asking you to submit your questions for a Q&A video on Friday. And well, today's Friday, so it's obviously time to go through your questions. But just quickly before we do, if you're not already following us on Instagram and you didn't see that story where I was asking for your questions, then please do go and check it out. The team have been putting a lot of effort into bringing you lots of content there. I think there'll be plenty of stuff that you'll like, plenty of stuff that will help you with your trading and various other things. So the link's in the description box, but otherwise it's just at Duomo Initiative on Instagram. Check it out, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, let's jump into the first question.
Intronaut95 asked, how can I effectively avoid overtrading?
So things like overtrading, avoiding losses, plenty of these big problems that beginner traders have are things that you have to overcome to become a successful trader, but it's not something where you could just click your fingers, give a solution and you'll overcome it, because there are so many different factors at play there. When it comes to overtrading though, there are usually two reasons. The first one is to do with a misunderstanding of what it means to be a trader, and the second one is about a misalignment that you have. So that first point, the misunderstanding, a lot of people think that if you're a trader, you have to be trading all the time, and therefore, if you're trading, you should always be in a trade. But that's not the case. You know, it doesn't mean that you're being unproductive if you have a trading session and don't open a trade. It's just part of trading. Trading, or at least good trading, is just as much about the trades that you don't open as the ones that you do open. So in any situation, your default position as a trader should be to do nothing. Your default position shouldn't be to be in a trade. Like, you shouldn't be thinking, I'm a trader, why am I not in a trade? Your default position is to do nothing. Keep that in mind the next time you're questioning whether something is a trading opportunity or not. And the second point about this misalignment is that over the long term, you know that if you want to be successful, you have to stick to a system that you know over the long term with the wins and the losses is going to be net profitable. But in the short term, you've got a misalignment because most people don't think about the fact that they've got to stick to trades with their system. They don't think about the fact that you might have to lose some trades in order to gain over the long term. Instead, they get this feeling of like FOMO, you know, the feeling of missing out, and they enter the trade. But instead, you have to sort of get more fulfillment from sticking with your long-term goals. You need to align your short-term feelings with those long-term goals. So rather than getting fulfillment from having that FOMO feeling and scratching that itch, you've got to get your fulfillment from saying no to those situations, even if they end up in a profitable trade, or what would have been a profitable trade. You say no to those situations and get the fulfillment from the fact that you're sticking with your long-term plan, the plan that's going to bring you to success.
Asked, when did it finally all click and make sense, and how did you get there?
I think when you're going through the process of learning and transitioning to becoming a consistently profitable trader, there's not really any point in time where you're like, the penny's dropped, I get it all now. But when you look back, like looking in hindsight, when you've gone through it all, then you can definitely connect the dots and start to see where those aha moments were. And I think there's a couple, because what happens, or I tend to find, is that you progress to a certain level, you plateau for a while, and then you find something that helps you to turn a corner and start to reach new levels. I'd say one of the biggest ones at the beginning was realizing that not everything being taught online is going to be something that's profitable, because I used to learn as much as possible thinking that all of these things were going to help me to be profitable, and therefore the more I knew, the more I was going to earn. It's not the case. And instead I took an approach that was a bit more scientific, where I would test things and see what worked and what didn't, and keep the things that worked and get rid of the things that don't work. So that was one thing. The next thing was keeping a journal and making sure that I'm consistent in tracking and optimizing everything that I do. This took me from being profitable to even more profitable in my trading, or we should say from being consistent to even more consistent. And I'd say one big one that most people go through, but I definitely had to learn the hard way multiple times, is about risk management. It's one thing to make the money, it's a whole nother thing to keep hold of it. That's why you hear plenty of beginners that say, oh, I've made X 1000% this month, but a few months later, they usually don't have that money still. And that was what I went through as well. I'd make huge returns, lose it, huge returns, lose it. And then finally, I managed to start making huge returns and keep it, or at least start being more steady and accumulate over time the bigger returns that made a big difference.
Logan Chalkley wants to know the biggest challenge after you achieve full-time trading.
100% definitely the boredom. Because when you go through that initial excitement of, wow, I'm trading full time and things feel more meaningful, or when you've got a bigger account that you're trading with and each trade feels a bit more exciting, once that novelty wears off, you've basically got yourself in the charts. Now, I've always been the type of person that likes interaction with my work. I like to deal with people, whether that's clients or something else. And obviously you don't have that with trading. So over time, I had to find ways to cure that boredom, which is part of the reason why I'm speaking to you now. So yeah, 100% definitely the boredom.
Zacharos said, at what point should someone quit trading forever? Lost 50k so far.
You can only decide this really on an individual basis. For some people, 50k might be all of their life savings. For other people, that might be a small amount of it. So it really depends on you. It also depends on what sort of passion you've still got left for trading after that point. It might be that that's completely taken the wind out of your sails and you're not interested in putting in the work anymore, because if you've lost that much, then the reality is you've got a lot of work to put in before you're ready to trade live again. So you need to decide, do you have the passion to do it again? And if you do have the passion, I think you need to take a few steps back and say, okay, yes, I've been trading with real money. Yes, I'm desperate to make that money back. But the only way I'm going to do that is to jump back to a demo account and reevaluate everything. See what I was doing right or wrong and take baby steps back into using a live account, and then increase the amount of money and then start seeing if you start to make good progress over time. But really only you can decide. I can't say, well, you've lost 50 grand, give up, because everyone's different. If you've still got that fire inside you, continue, but just take the right steps.
From JB Boone, how do you maintain patience after many consecutive losses?
Well, this ties into something I said earlier when I was talking about overtrading, and it ties into some of the other questions coming up. And it's basically that if you have a plan that you know succeeds over the long term, you just have to kind of deal with those losses as they come. You know, if a system is even 90% profitable, which is extreme, like you win 90% of your trades, then even within that 10% of your trades that are losing, you could go through a losing streak. There's a way of calculating it. Off the top of my head, I can't think what the thing, I think it's Bernoulli trials or something like that. There's a way of calculating the expected number of losing streaks you're going to get of certain values. And by doing that, you can see the probability of it happening. And for most people, if you're going to go through a string of losses at some point, you've got to suck it up and keep going. However, you should have safeguards in your trading to avoid situations like a previous question where you're going to lose 50k. You need to have a safeguard where at a certain point, you know you've got to go through certain checks in your account, maybe drop down to a demo account, reassess whether it's something you're doing wrong, whether it's human error or whether it's your system. And as long as it's not human error, as long as it's the system, and you know that system's profitable over the long term through your testing and previous trading, then you're all good.
Beetlejuice asks, how to be calm during a position.
So I think this ties in with some of the other questions as well. Like basically, if your system you know is going to be long-term profitable from your testing and from the trading you've done before, then you know you've got to take some losses in the process of achieving that. So therefore, each trade doesn't matter. What matters is that the trade is in alignment with your system and what you should be doing, and therefore it takes the pressure off completely, because you know it's just one part of an overall process. You know, what people do, especially when they're first learning, is that they take the trades personally. They see every single trade as a reflection of their ability as a trader. Whether that trade they've taken, they've been smart or they haven't been smart, whether they're a good trader or not. But that's not the way it is. Trading is, I like to say, a game of probabilities. So even if you open a trade that's really, really certain, it's a great trade, there's still a chance it can lose. And as soon as you start understanding those things, not just understanding them, but really internalizing them and feeling them and really knowing that it doesn't matter the outcome of the trade, it's the overall system, then each trade doesn't matter so much. You can open a trade and you can feel calm about it. And I think the next question ties in with this a little bit.
Dekanaka asks, any advice for someone who is constantly staring at the charts and babysitting their trades?
So I haven't always had this rule with my trading. It's something that's sort of developed probably over the last 5 years or something. But basically, before you make any decision, you need to already know what it is that you're trying to achieve that decision, why you're doing it, and where your next decision is going to be made. Now, if you want to be more active with your trading, then of course you could be making decisions constantly, every movement in the candle. But if you're kind of getting into the situation where you're feeling nervous and you're panicked, you don't know what to do, and you're being very reactionary on every price movement, then it's clear you're not yet a properly experienced trader. So instead, every time you make a decision, whether that's opening a trade, scaling in, scaling out, deciding to stay in a trade, because that's also a decision, like if it reaches your original target or one of them and you decide I'm going to stay in longer, when you make that decision, decide already at what price point are you going to make your next decision, and maybe set an alert, and obviously make sure you have your stop loss in place, and then go away from the screen. Don't babysit it, because you looking at it is not going to change anything. All it's going to do is build up this loss aversion in you and this panic that you have, and probably lead you to taking the wrong actions. So decide where your next decision point is going to be, then step away and only come back when that is happening. Or if you want to follow the charts, at least you'll know you're not babysitting them so much, because you know when you're going to make a decision next.
Tim Daking asks, can you really be a successful trader without automation?
Yes, of course you can. Automation is one style of trading, but obviously there's got to be some sort of system behind that automation. Now, you're going to get some really sophisticated systems that are going to do things that humans can't do. Even for us, we have versions of our way of trading that are automated, and those are doing calculations based on things I'm not able to perceive, and so they're doing things I could never do. But the trading that I'm doing is based on a similar thing, so there's alignment between those, and therefore you can still profit from doing manual trading. I don't think automation is necessary at all. Alright guys, so that's all the questions for now. There were some that we didn't answer, so sorry about that, but we didn't want the videos to drag on forever and ever. If you want to make sure that you can get your question answered in the next Q&A session, which is likely to be in a couple of weeks, then make sure you're following us on Instagram. I'll announce it in the story, and look forward to answering some of those questions soon. If you like this one, if you want more Q&A videos, hit the thumbs up button, leave any comments or questions below, including maybe some questions for the next one, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, so you don't miss out on future videos like this one and other lessons and snippets about trading. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.